If we win Pennsylvania, not me, if we win Pennsylvania, we win the whole ball of wax. It's over. It's over.
Welcome back. That was former President Trump last hour in Reading, Pennsylvania, ahead of a stop later this evening in Pittsburgh. Both campaigns know just how crucial the Keystone State is. With me now is Congressman Brendan Boyle, Democrat from Pennsylvania. Congressman, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, happy to be with you again.
Well, happy to have you here. Happy election eve. You are there on the ground in one of the most important states in this entire presidential race. How are you feeling about the state of the race right now?
Well, in a bipartisan spirit, I'm going to start off by surprisingly agreeing with Donald Trump on only one thing, and that is, yeah, I do think Pennsylvania is, as he said, the whole ball game. I think that whichever side wins here, and it's 19 electoral votes, we're the biggest battleground state. I think that that will likely clinch the path to 270 needed in order to get to the White House. That was the case in 2016. And that was also the case in 2020 when the race was called here in Pennsylvania. That beautiful, warm Saturday morning, that was actually the presidential election. Now, in terms of where things stand at the moment, it's always predestined to be close here, as it was in 2016 and 2020. Both were one-point races or even under that. I think we're in the same kind of race again this time. But I would rather be Kamala Harris and her campaign than the Trump campaign, especially these final 72 hours or so when it mostly comes down to field and GOTV.
Well, let me ask you about the Get Out the Vote effort, because a lot of it, I know, and I've been talking to folks who were involved in it, has been focused not just on getting out the vote, but making sure that the Latino community is coming out to vote, particularly in the wake of those comments made by the comedian at that event in Madison Square Garden for former President Trump when he disparaged Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans. I am told anecdotally that there is a sense that Latinos and, frankly, people throughout the state of Pennsylvania were really offended by that comment. What are you hearing? Because Trump had made some real inroads with the Latino community. Has anything shifted based on what you're hearing?
Well, Kristen, you know, being from here, that there's a pretty large Puerto Rican population in Philadelphia. It's mostly in my congressional district in North Philly, east of Broad Street. Approximately 115,000 Puerto Ricans in Philadelphia, people either born on the island or first generation born here, but have parents and grandparents who were born there. In addition to Philadelphia, you also have a large Puerto Rican population in Allentown and in Reading. I am always amazed at what actually breaks through the noise and reaches people who generally don't follow politics. Boy, that garbage comment at the Madison Square Garden Festival of Hate, as I call it, but the rally that he had about a week ago, I'm just amazed the way that spread like wildfire and has spread throughout the Puerto Rican community. I heard about it almost instantaneously from a number of people who I'm friends with who are texting me who aren't necessarily political. So I do think that, again, in a one-point race, something like this can make the difference, especially when you consider, all told, we're talking about 500,000 Puerto Ricans being the population of Pennsylvania.
That's just fascinating that you think it has resonated that quickly and that significantly. I want to ask you about one of the headwinds facing Vice President Harris, which is the approval rating, quite frankly, of President Biden. Right now, former President Trump, according to our latest NBC News poll, his retroactive job approval rating is higher than Biden's. And, Congressman, it is higher than at any point in Donald Trump's presidency. What do you make of that, and what are the implications for the vice president?
You know, there's no question that this is a change election, that voters want to see change. The right track, wrong track figures that were released over the weekend show it by an almost 50-point margin. Now, what's interesting is that Kamala Harris has actually been talking about change. By some polling I've seen, she is now winning narrowly over Donald Trump in terms of which candidate best represents change. She has prosecuted the case that Donald Trump is the same tired, stale, old routine for almost a decade now. And people are sick of it and want to turn the page and move on. So I think there are many things that her campaign has done well. That and winning the argument on change is probably the single thing that she's done the best. And I think we'll look back on this, particularly if she were to win.
Well, Congressman Boyle, we always appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Please stay safe over these next 24, 48 hours. We really appreciate it. And now from the view from the other side of the aisle in this critical battleground, I'm joined by Pat Toomey, former Republican senator from the great state of Pennsylvania. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kristen.
It's great to see you. So let me ask you, what do you make of how former President Trump is closing out this race? A lot of folks have noticed his rhetoric does seem to be getting darker. He's not focused on what some of his allies have told me they want to hear him focus on, the economy and immigration.
I think he's there's been kind of two campaigns the way I've seen it. If you look at his paid advertising, it's on message, often very effective, and it's all about pressing the case against Harris for the Biden administration that she was part of. Completely legitimate, aggressive, and effective. But Donald Trump doesn't have the self-discipline to deliver that message. He can't resist the temptation to rehearse all of his grievances, to make the personal insults, to go wandering down all kinds of cul-de-sacs. I think that's been a story of his campaign. It seems to have gotten worse in the final weeks of the campaign. But it's not shocking. That's the nature of the guy.
How does it play in Pennsylvania, where, as we've laid out in 10 different ways, each of these candidates needs Pennsylvania if they want to win?
Very, very hard to get the math to work if you don't have Pennsylvania for either of them. Look, I think it's not the most effective message, right? The most effective message would be to contrast people's perception of good economic times and a relatively peaceful world versus what people believe is not such great economic times and certainly not a peaceful world. He's got other issues, but it ought to be about driving that case against Harris.
What do you make of the Trump ground game in Pennsylvania? Because by all accounts, our reporting suggests it has been outsourced to Elon Musk's super PAC, that it's not sort of this coordinated effort being driven directly by the campaign itself.
Yeah, it's a dangerous thing to do. I can't judge it in advance. We'll have to see what happens. But I think the Harris campaign has had far more resources on the ground for the get out the vote efforts. And when you sub this out, you're taking chances. Just
to be very clear, I mean, this is significant you're saying this because you've seen this, you've experienced this in Pennsylvania?
That is my understanding. Now, my understanding is that the Harris campaign has put more money into get out the vote resources, but I'm not close to either campaign.
Let's talk about this shock poll, if you will, out of Iowa. The Harris campaign says, we don't think we're going to win Iowa. However, they're looking closely at the 20-point gender gap. They think it's significant, particularly because we're talking about older women and more independent women. What do you make of this Iowa poll, even if it's an outlier, even if the top lines are an outlier? There seem to be some potential clues.
I'm not so sure.
Okay.
I think it's an outlier that can probably be dismissed if, I mean, at this point it's too late to see if it can be replicated. We'll find out tomorrow whether it actually
yes, we will.
The only poll that really matters. You know, polling is more difficult now than it's ever been. I think we still don't know, and we won't know for a little while, whether the pollsters have recalibrated correctly the amount of people they have to call in order to get the demographics met within the subset of people that actually respond. Very, very challenging. And then, of course, you have a herding mentality, right? As you get close to the election, no pollster wants to be the outlier. So I just think we don't know.
Not making too much of it. Let me ask you about the all-important Senate race in Pennsylvania. I know you have your eyes focused on that as well. What are you anticipating? What's the state of play there? Senator Casey looking for a fourth term, but getting a robust challenge from Dave McCormick.
And full disclosure, so I wrote in Nikki Haley on my ballot, and I voted for Republicans all the way down the line after that.
So split ticket. split ticket voter. Yeah.
Well, but
in that
not in a partisan
way.
way.
Well, there you go. Yes,
right.
yes, right. Yes, exactly.
As you probably know, 15% of Republican primary voters voted for Nikki Haley after she had withdrawn from the race.
Yes.
So that's interesting. But your question about McCormick is a great one. For me, the highest priority is Republican control of the Senate by the biggest possible margin. And I think Dave McCormick has run pretty much a perfect campaign. I can't think of a single thing I would have had him do differently. He's a great candidate. He's run a great race. He's had the resources to get his message across. And he is consistently, easily within the margin of error. Bob Casey has been below 50. Bob Casey is a very pleasant guy. I got along with him well in the Senate. But I don't think he's a terribly strong candidate. And he had the good fortune of running in good Democrat years in past cycles. This is a much more even year. So I think McCormick is pretty likely to pull this out.
Okay, you heard the prediction here. Senator, we're out of time, but just yes or no. Was it a mistake that Trump did not campaign with Nikki Haley based on what you just said?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Senator Pat Toomey.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your perspective.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.